The monochromatic green, the stained tiles, the eerie, unsettling ambiance of the desolate pizzeria, abandoned and forgotten. These foundations, along with its mix of jump scares, puzzles, and deep lore, are what led Five Nights at Freddy's to become an instant success. Now, after 2 games and an abundance of characters, we are introduced to one much more dark, cruel, and unholy: Springtrap. Before I go in depth about Springtrap, I'd like to give a brief overview of the series. Five Nights at Freddy's is a small indie game that was released in late 2014. The series became an overnight sensation, spawning multiple sequels which included 10 plus games, 20 plus books, and a movie to be released today. Players take the role of a night shift security guard, tasked with overseeing Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The pizzeria houses animatronics that will come to life and try to break into your office. Using nothing but the cameras and doors, you have to survive through the night. However, in the third installment, dubbed Five Nights at Freddy's 3, the player must survive the haunted attraction, based on the mystery surrounding the pizzeria, titled Fazbear's Fright. You must monitor the security cameras, audio devices, and ventilation systems to avoid being killed by the animatronics or other hazards. The game has a complex storyline that involves the haunted, grim history of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza restaurant, and the tragedies that transpired. Springtrap, formerly known as William Afton, is the main antagonist of the series. Previously being the co-owner of the franchise, he was instrumental in the original success of the restaurants. Later on, becoming a sadistic serial killer, leading to the harrowing downfall of the company and the lives of so many. William, wanting to hide the evidence, had stuffed the bodies of his victims into the animatronic suits. These animatronics became haunted by these child spirits, angry and wanting vengeance. However, William snuck into the restaurant late at night and began to dismantle the animatronics. The souls that inhabited were free from the suits and cornered William, trapping him in the back room. With no other option, William entered the Spring Bonnie suit and began taunting the spirits. Believing they could no longer harm him, the combination of the leaking ceiling and William's heavy, panicked breathing as he entered the suit made things take a turn for the worse. All of the spring locks activated at once, crushing William inside. With his body mangled, he fell into a pool of blood. His body convulsed in a gruesome agony as his bones and flesh were compressed into a pulp, squished by the animatronic parts housed within the suit. The spirits began to fade away as William thrashed around on the floor. William Afton died that night. The doors to the back room were sealed shortly after by an unknown individual, leaving William trapped. Until 30 years later, when the employees of the Fazbear Fright attraction, in search of animatronics, uncovered the sealed back room. Being the only functional animatronic they were able to find, Springtrap is released into the attraction. Bloodthirsty and filled with rage, he is coming for you. You, the player, are the security guard, and using the tools at your disposal, you must lure him away with the sound of children's voices. Meanwhile, attempt to manage your rundown equipment. It's a grueling process as you deal with the hallucinations caused by the lack of ventilation. You must continue to monitor the cameras to track Springtrap's movement. It's of the utmost importance to not take your eyes off him, because the moment you do, it will already be too late. Now that everyone is caught up to speed, I'd like to delve into the brilliance that is Springtrap's design. Springtrap's previous Golden Bonnie suit is now faded, having a molded green texture and color, tattered and worn down with vast rips and tears. The internal wires and mechanical parts protrude throughout the entire suit. Lying underneath is the corpse of William Afton. Muscle and soft tissue is visible. His skin and bones decayed and withered away. You can see the silhouette of his skull and teeth, which leaves our imagination to ponder what he looks like under there. We are given just enough to make us wonder. This fear of the unknown is very important in making the audience feel fear. It helps separate something from being scary from something being truly frightening. When speaking of horror, the uncanny valley is a common phenomenon that is mentioned. For the uninitiated, this is the unsettling feeling that people experience when faced with something that has human-like characteristics. This feeling can be deeply evoked by animatronics in real life as well, like those found at Chuck E. Cheese. We know they aren't human, however, their movements and facial expressions are attempting to mimic this, causing an uneasy sensation. There's no better example of this phenomenon than Springtrap, a living, walking amalgamation. Certain aspects of Springtrap's design help in increasing the innate primal fear. One example of this is the 5-fingered hands he possesses. The other animatronics only have 4-fingered hands. This may seem like a minuscule detail, however, it substantially adds to the unsettling vibes. Springtrap's bulbous yet lifeless eyes help in that dreadful feeling you get when staring at him. The man in the suit ceased to be and became something different, the essence of fear and despair. Springtrap's design effectiveness is amplified when we take into account his environment, a run-down, desolate horror attraction. Its goal is to mimic the original pizzeria. In doing this, the employees had filled it with memorabilia from the previous restaurants. The appearance of the attraction gives off a feeling of discomfort, yet has a sense of familiarity. This sensation can be defined as liminal space. Liminal spaces are portrayed typically as empty or abandoned places that often quite feel surreal. Abandoned amusement parks, hospitals, hotels, and diners are just a few that fall into this category. This genre of horror has become quite a popular topic online in recent years. A fascination with these familiar, disorienting places invoke a primal fear that once again is the fear of the unknown. The game does a fantastic job of illustrating this. In the pizzeria, we are met with a very familiar aesthetic. The floors are checkered tiles, littered with filth and dust and grime. The walls appear almost burnt with a thick film covering the majority of them. Streaks of sludge run rampant throughout the building's walls, just barely illuminated by the faint glow of the lights. The low lighting plays another role in leaving much for the mind to interpret on its own. What is it that you think you see, hiding in the darkness? The attraction being scattered with old, scrapped animatronic parts allows for your mind to play tricks on you. You begin searching for something that may not be there. The lighting is far too dark to make out the shapes of things that may be lurking within. In the game, Springtrap typically doesn't stand out in the open, but just barely seen by your camera. This makes it pretty difficult to spot him in most rooms, even if you know where to look. He may just have his arm in view or the shine of his soulless eyes glowing just out of frame. Other times, Springtrap will be shrouded in darkness, just barely visible to the camera. It feels almost as if he's intentionally avoiding the cameras. Springtrap is different from the classic animatronics. He has sentience and knows you're watching him. His movement pattern is difficult to follow on its own, and it doesn't help that the cameras are constantly fading in and out while static covers the screen. This makes spotting him not only a burden, but also a very demanding task. However, once he reaches your office, Springtrap won't budge and will stare at you without breaking eye contact. He will continue doing this up till the very last moment when you shift your glance. That's when he'll strike. Moving on to the use of sound in this game. Sound choice and music play a major role not in just video games, but also in film. It can be the difference between a scene giving off the intended effect or falling flat. The main music in this game is the track under the name Desolate Underworld, originally composed by Bjorn Lynn. It's a very unsettling, ominous track that makes the player feel helpless as they struggle to get their bearings. It helps to set the tone and pairs well with the other in-game sounds, such as the heavy breathing, blaring alarm, Springtrap's movements in the vents, the static of the camera system rebooting, and the white noise produced by the fan. All of these sounds culminate in putting the player on edge as they attempt to listen to hear the movements, until you hear a familiar sound of chimes once you reach 6 AM or the static from a game over. Springtrap is a character with so much depth not seen in the other characters throughout the series. The other animatronics were more antagonists than anything else. They were just lost souls, confused and forced to inhabit those suits. They would not be there in the first place if not for William Afton. He was the catalyst, a deranged man that hurt so many, caused pain, destroying the lives of innocents caught in the middle. In the previous entries, there was no personal connection to the animatronics, as they were just haunted and attacked the player out of confusion, not malice. while the third entry, it's more intimate, with Springtrap knowing he's being watched and reacts accordingly. He hid himself in the shadows, altering his course appropriately. This isn't just some robot, it's a serial killer with the sole purpose of hunting you. Now that is how Five Nights at Freddy's Springtrap cemented himself into becoming one of the most popular icons in the history of horror games. And with that, this was Horror Analyzed. Thanks for watching.